Paul. Glenn Ruskin. Is Glenn on the call today? My question relates to changing or updating radio creative for your client. Do you use any kind of formula on how long a particular message needs to air before it needs to be updated, or should air before it needs to be updated or replaced? We often use 6 to 8 weeks being the medium shelf life of a message, using ongoing branding style schedule, medium being 21 30-second messages a week on a 5A 1A rotation, up to 30 a week. Does that sound right? I would be going off of what I've heard. Dave can give you actual knowledge.
The more frequency you have, the sooner you should change it. So if it's 21 times a week, 6 to 8 weeks might be a little long unless you're rotating a couple of ads. When we do a schedule that's a frequency of 3 for the average listener, usually about 4 weeks. But if we're running a couple of ads, we'll go longer. If you rotate a whole bunch of ads, you can, rotate 30 or 40 ads. You could run them all year long. Don't touch it again. As long as they kind of feel like the same campaign. And that kind of depends on the client, but I hope that helps.
I think that's the answer.
My gut answer is 8 weeks feels a little long.
Dave, we need to be practicing our Brady Bunch interactions.
Which way? That way. I turned the wrong way. There you are.
Oh, hey. So good to see you.
And there's everybody else.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. What's our next question, Paul? Grant Langford. Guys, we always talk about frequency being one of the key factors of a successful campaign. Typically, this is done with a reach schedule for the whole audience and all day parts. I would like to get your opinion on a schedule of fixed time commercials. This would be one a day, but at the same time adjacent to a news or weather feature. Oftentimes, this can be a way to get new business on the air at a more affordable annual investment. Do you ever use a schedule like this when the client's budget is low? I know Roy used to, but we haven't talked about it with any of the wizards for several years. Dave Young probably sold a ton of these back in the day. Does this change how you manage their expectations? Does it change the chickening out period? That's a great question. And what are your thoughts on effectiveness? Dave, I'll let you start.
Well, yeah, we did. We sold a lot of those on our station, but a lot of them were for people that were really too small of a business to do much more than the 7:30 weather is brought to you by Smith's Tire Center, where we have one tire for sale. Probably not, but I love horizontal schedule. That's what I call it, a horizontal schedule, where you buy the same time every day. That's how you build frequency with a tiny schedule. There's no other way to do it. If you sell somebody a broad rotator and they're running one ad a day and it runs 6 o'clock Monday and 10 o'clock Tuesday and then middle of the night on Wednesday, they'll never get the frequency that they need to be effective. But if you run a horizontal schedule, a set time sponsorship, it lets you build a frequency with an audience. It's a much smaller part of your audience, but you can build the right frequency per week just based on people's habits, right? The people that listen to the 7 a.m. news are the same people that listen to the 7 a.m. news every day. And so being on that newscast every day is a way to build frequency and not spend tons of money on a broad reaching schedule. So one of the biggest mistakes somebody can make is to overreach, right? If you can't afford to reach the entire station, man, don't, because it's I think Roy's famous quote there is like, it's like buying a ticket halfway to Europe. It's just not going to get the job done. So I love horizontal schedules, and
Yeah.
I know we're a bunch of radio people here, but it's also a great way for people to buy TV, right? TV stations, same as radio stations, they want to put you on big, broad rotator things and say, oh, you're going to get all these different times all day long. It's like, no, tell them I want my ad in Jeopardy at 7 o'clock on the first break every night. And that's the only way you reach the people that have a habit of listening to Jeopardy every night and without buying the entire station schedule.
Yeah, I think you sort of, Grant, it feels like you answered all of your own questions in your question. Like, the answer, and you're absolutely right. The only thing I would say that I could add to the whole conversation is, yes, it lengthens the chickening out period becomes a much bigger deal, is what I would say. So, like, you, in a full big campaign where you own the whole thing, a Spence Diamonds or then your chickening out period on that is if someone gets really punchy in the first month or two. And so it only takes a certain type of person who gets really punchy in the first month or two, and you have to really set those expectations. But with an ad campaign like Spence, within 6 months, it's proving itself, right?
Yeah,
but you run something once a day like that, you got to prepare someone for like the 8 to 12 months, get that train rolling, right? And just let them know, like, hey, this is not a bad thing because you can afford it and we need to do it. But just know it will take us, and it'll add on 30 to 40% longer before it gets up to movement. But the thing is, a train, takes slower to get it to movement with one engine versus 4 engines, right? But once that train goes, it's the same fucking mass and same velocity and the same power once it's up to 40, right? Like adding 3 more engines to that train doesn't really change a lot once it's up and moving, right? So you can have the same impact as some of these bigger brands. It's just going to take a little longer to get the train moving.
Well, and I think the other thing is be very, very clear that they're buying a small part of your audience, right? So the momentum may be there, but they're driving a smaller train because they have a smaller audience. And so it'll feel like it's a lot longer too, but the people that are actually tuned into that same time every day, I feel like it's a small subset, but the chickening out period shouldn't be much longer. The expectation that you need to set, though, is that you're buying a very small audience because you can't afford our whole station. If you could afford our whole station, the chickening out period wouldn't feel as noticeable because it starts to ramp up. But when you're buying such a small section of it, and it's a good way to reach a small group of people, the chickening out period is like you may not see a bump that's all that noticeable, but honestly, those people that listen every day will start to understand who you are. And remember, in the advertising performance equation, the 2 big levers, share of voice is the one formula, the one variable in that formula that you can actually purchase. So they're not purchasing very much share of voice, but the 2 big levers that have an even bigger impact are the impact quotient, which is how powerful the ad is. That's up to you, Grant. And make sure that they understand that the personal experience factor is a key as well, because your ad might bring somebody in the door the first time, but how this client treats their customers is going to determine whether they come back a second time. And it's also going to determine whether they tell their friends about it. So they need to focus on the experience they're delivering as well. And that will make a small schedule work better. It feeds that share of voice back in the form of feedback through word of mouth.
Grant, did you have any thoughts?
No, I think that answers all the questions. I think, as we all know, the clients with the smaller budget are also a little more fidgety, right? Because even though it's a smaller dollar amount, it's a bigger percentage of their
right. It's rent money
budget, right? So when we talk about chickening out period, depending on the investment, I know the chickening out period obviously doesn't really sometimes equate with the investment. It's the actual person too.
Right.
And who they are and how they run their business. But that's just one of the things that we talked about as a team here. Is I wanted to get your guys' opinion on, because we haven't talked about it for a while. Obviously, if somebody could buy a full schedule, of course, that's the route we want to take, but there's usually more zeros attached to that. So once we get people involved in these type schedules, just wanted to get your thoughts, and maybe we can share some of your thoughts with our clients too, to say.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, it's a great call and it's effective. It's heavier management load for both you and them emotionally.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's just, it's just going to be a bigger emotional.
Examples of going to the gym and those kinds of things too. As long as you're consistent, you're going to get results. But if you're only going once a day, once a week, or 2 days a week instead of the whole full week, it's going to take a little longer, right? So,
but you'll still build muscle. You'll still lose weight.
I think it's also a good way to help that client grow too. So when they can afford to buy more than the one ad, then do another fixed time ad, right? So if they're buying the 7 a.m. news, hey, let's start running a 4:30 drive time ad as well, but we're going to hit 2 different pieces of our audience that way.
Yeah.
And that grows them up to the point where they can eventually start a full audience type of
I
thing.
like your workout analogy, Grant. I would use using that on every single meeting. That really appeals to me because I just got back into working out again after having not done it for a long time, and that is the exact same mentality. Is like, yeah. But when I first started, he was like, "We're going to do 2 workouts a week, and we're going to fit them where we can, and you're going to do what you can." And then 4 weeks from now, we're going to see how we're going, and we might add in 1. But it's going to take us time to see these markers get hit. And I just had to set my mentality for like, okay, I got to plan for 6 months before I look like Superman.